Hello, OT friends, and welcome to the Uncommon OT series. I'm Patricia Modis, and I'm your host, a Filipino American, native New Yorker, currently based in Los Angeles, bulldog mama, and an uncommon occupational therapist myself for the past 22 years. On this podcast, you will hear me proudly feature the unique careers of occupational therapy practitioners working in non-traditional and role-emerging practice areas, settings where OT is uncommon. I invite you to receive a dose of OT inspiration, to learn, to think outside of the box, and to be energized and motivated to follow in these unconventional paths. Happy listening. Welcome back, OT friends. Today, I am super excited to introduce you to our guest of honor, Dr. Elissa Lee. Dr. Lee was appointed as Director and Senior Advisor of Community Engagement for California Volunteers, Office of the Governor, and she leads the Neighbor to Neighbor and the Meet Six Neighbors initiatives, which encourages Californians to connect with their neighbors to address social isolation, community health, and resilience. So here to tell us more about her work is Dr. Elissa Lee. Welcome.
Hi, so great to be here.
So happy to have met you and so happy to share with our listeners your role because it is so different, to say the least, right? And just really quite fascinating. Again, supports our mission, right? Supports
Mhm.
our goal of informing occupational therapy practitioners of the variety of roles that we can hold out there in the world.
Yeah,
And yours is a perfect example. So thank you again for, spending time with us here on the podcast.
of course. Yeah, I think this is actually the first of its kind in general across the country role. So I'm excited to share more and yeah.
Amazing. Okay. So, yeah, let's get started by maybe having you tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe some of your favorite occupations.
Yeah, so I'm Alyssa. I use she, her pronouns. I started training as an occupational therapist now a while ago. And I think I've just been really privileged to be able to impact community in different ways throughout my career. So after occupational therapy, got to work a little bit in health journalism, health administration, some different foundations. I often joke that I keep going upstream to find the source of the issues, and now I'm in the public sector. And yeah, I've had the privilege of leading this Neighbor to Neighbor and Meet Six Neighbors initiatives for the last few years. And I think what really drew me to this position was the opportunity to do something to create a statewide program that could improve people's health. And I think as an OT and as a journalist, often seeing people's burdens of disease could be alleviated by social supports and social connections. And so
Mm-hmm.
really wanted to kind of delve into that. And some of my occupations, I love food.
You and me
I
both.
Yeah, I love cooking it. I love gathering around food. I love trying all the different restaurants in California and LA especially. It's amazing. I love spending quality time with friends, family, neighbors, loved ones. I loved dancing and hiking, and my new uh, occupation that I am working on is practicing Tai Chi. Um,
Ooh, I have
because
a
I,
friend.
yes. Yeah, would love to learn more. I did it a little bit as a kid, but never had the patience to, slow down. And so I think now is a good time to to do that.
Oh,
Yeah.
incredible. Well, thanks for, sharing a little bit about yourself with us. And I know you already talked a little bit about, your motivation
Mhm.
for this type of work was really kind of getting to the source, right? And getting to the
Mhm.
source of the problem. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So, one of the, I guess prior to taking on this position, one of the things I got to do was a journalist and aging journalism fellowship, Focus in my area focus was on BIPOC and LGBTQ communities, and senior caregiving in those communities. And I probably interviewed 100 plus seniors during that time and was really, I think, struck by how many folks would take me to their front door and just start pointing out their neighbors. Like that one helped us during our last ER visit, took us to the hospital. Like that one helped us during the pandemic get groceries. And, that one sang us a birthday song from near the window.
Oh.
And so yeah, have had the privilege, I think I grew up between Texas and Taiwan of having a lot of neighbors and community around me. And since coming back to the States, have moved around quite a lot. And so hadn't really stopped to think about our local communities. And so, yeah, felt that once the legislature had granted this one-time funding for this neighbor to neighbor program, really jumped at it. It was first launched by Governor Newsom in 2020 as part of the stay-at-home order, asking people to check in on their neighbors. And
Mm.
we partnered with CalOES, Department of Aging, particularly to focus on some of our senior neighbors. And through that, actually, we all these stories poured in that are pretty similar that, people helping each other through this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, this was kind of the next step of like, how do we kind of continue to address like this epidemic of loneliness that we're in? I got to start right, I think the same month, Dr. Vivek Murthy, the former Surgeon General, published the advisory on the epidemic of loneliness. And so have
Wow.
really kind of used that as my North Star, if you
Yes, your
will.
guiding light. Okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So, was the role meant to be for an occupational therapist?
I think so. Yeah, I feel like OTs have a really like and sometimes I remember like we had those standardized patients who would tell us like, oh, OTs are like the best at listening to us. And so what I started with when I first began my role was kind of a 6-month listening and learning tour. So I went and spoke with people all across California, community members, researchers, local government, state agencies, community-based nonprofits. I joke everybody because everyone is a neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
And something I really wanted to learn is like, how can a state support something that's meant to be so local and so grassroots? Because, yeah, it's it's the state. And so I think what we were able to kind of learn from that is that, there's maybe two big buckets of things we could support with. One is helping to set a cultural norm that,
Mm-hmm.
every Californian is a neighbor. We should get to know our neighbors for our health and well-being and for the betterment of community.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when we launched our Meet Six Neighbors campaign, which I guess research has found that knowing about six of your neighbors is associated with better health, both mental and physical. And so kind of a fun, smart goal for folks.
Okay.
Um, and then
Six?
also,
You said six neighbors?
yes, six
Okay.
neighbors. I was like, five would have been easier, but yeah, finding the just right challenge for folks to, get encouraged and kind of that permission structure to get to know your neighbors. And
Yeah.
then the
And to
other side
feel
is
in community, right? It would,
exactly. Yeah, yeah. If you know one neighbor, if they're out of town, then that's it.
yeah.
But if you know six, then you feel when you're out walking, you might see one of them. And then the other piece is like social infrastructure, which I think a lot about the environment PEO and some of the environmental models, but
Mm-hmm.
I think we learn from a lot of surveying too. People, if you don't know your neighbors, you might be a little anxious to knock on doors or answer the
Yeah.
door. And so if there's opportunities for us to make parks and libraries and schools, many of whom are already doing this quite well, and to be socially connected spaces. And yeah, if we're all on technology all the time, and research has shown that it has been isolating for folks, is there a way we can use that as a tool so folks stop scrolling, start strolling the streets?
Ah,
Um,
cute. I love that. It's
have
catchy.
to give it to our comms team for that one. And yeah, like also feeling that as the state, there's different people feel isolation at all levels. So not just the neighbor who feels isolated, but the neighborhood organizer might feel isolated, and the local elected leader might feel a little isolated, or the state agency. And so as the state, are we able to kind of bring people together to like share best practices? We brought together a bunch of the California State Libraries and other libraries a couple months ago, and they had such wonderful, incredible ideas together. So, yeah, long-winded
So
answer.
it's not at all because it gives us, a good kind of picture of the different parts of your role and the different
Yeah,
interactions or whom you have to kind of interact with. So this might be a great time for us to hear more about your uncommon OT work. I know you've described a little bit already, but
mhm.
yeah, maybe tell us a little bit about the setting, the space where you're working, the population that you're serving. I know it's the community, but is there anything more specific you can share? And,
Yeah.
some of the needs that you're addressing.
Yes, definitely. There's definitely no typical day, which is something I love about my work as well. We've been working with quite a different, quite a number of communities across the state. I like to say my population is the 40 million Californians,
Yeah.
or the 40 million who call California home. Um, and yeah, but I think we've been able to do also a couple of grant programs. So we've invested in 8 different local governments across the state, spanning rural, suburban, and urban communities. So it's been really incredible to see a lot of their work, and how it can vary from setting to setting, but also be very similar. I
Yeah.
think a lot of the needs that we're addressing, I think initially it was very much about disaster resiliency, both in preparedness, response, recovery, the whole disaster management cycle. But also, I think this ongoing and accelerating crisis of social isolation. So really, I think what each community, we ask them to do a needs assessment initially and kind
Hmm.
of do surveying, focus groups, maybe draw upon some of the um, surveys they've done in the past, because we know a lot of these communities are oversurveyed, and kind of build programming that the community wants to see. And so it could look very different. I think City of San Jose and City of Richmond, for example, there's some communities that have a lot of blight. And so the first thing was really to focus on like how do we kind of beautify our communities so that
Hmm.
usually people who are not from this community keep coming to dump.
Yeah.
Can we do something about that? In places like Paradise, which was um, impacted by the 2018 Camp Fire,
Hmm.
where it burned down most of the town. Can we do stuff to help rebuild, both literally rebuild? So we worked with Habitat for Humanity and CHIP, which is an affordable housing building, to bring volunteers to help build homes and
Hmm.
build the resilient landscaping around it, so that if there's another fire, like there's some buffer zones,
Okay.
but also rebuilding community, because a lot of people are coming back for the first time, and um, there are new families moving in as well. And so, yeah, lots of different kinds of activities. I think I wrote that like one day I could be doing community focus groups in person or on Zoom. Another day I'm doing Zumba with the Tias in the park for the community kickoff. So it's been quite fun.
Well, now I see why OT is well suited for the position.
Yeah.
Right. So, anything else that sort of drew you to this type of work, other than, wanting to really make an impactful change?
Yeah, I think it is also, it's been a very feel-good project, I will say, in that, like, there obviously always comes with some of the challenges, and we know social connection can be messy and dramatic sometimes, as my neighborhood and, growing up would tell you. But it's always worth it, I think.
Hmm.
And so, um, yeah, I've been doing a lot of not I think when I took on this role too, I didn't want to just talk the talk, but I also wanted to walk the walk and
Yeah.
get to know more of my own neighbors. And um, I think there's like a couple elements to the story, but I've always also wanted to learn Chinese calligraphy brush painting
Mm.
because I was very close with my grandmother, who I was mentioning earlier. She had a stroke in the
Mhm.
early 2000s, and my family moved from Texas to Taiwan to help caregive for her. And the
Oh,
occupational therapists really, I think, tapped into her love for art to help her with some of the rehabilitation that she was doing and kind of maintenance of her skills and her
yes.
ability. And so she passed a little while ago, and I wanted to be closer to her spirit and learn brush painting. And Patricia, I looked everywhere. I was like looking in San Francisco, San Jose to find a teacher. I could find calligraphy, but not the, Chinese, the painting.
Oh.
I found a teacher in San Diego. So then briefly I was like, should I fly down there and take one class with her? And I guess like after a few months after I had this thought, I was walking with my husband down the street, and I live in an apartment building, but there are a couple duplexes at the end of the block, and we met this elderly couple. The woman was out like cutting her husband's hair, and we started a conversation about her garden, and really quickly like she was very opened up to us about her husband's dementia and how it's
Oh.
becoming it became a lot more severe actually. During the pandemic, she felt like he was not getting the social connection because she was
Mm-hmm.
stuck in the UK with her daughter, who lives there, and um, yeah, so we were able to kind of share space. And at some point, I asked her like, what's your name? Like, how should I refer to you? And she said, you should call me Teacher Chen, like Chen Lao Shi, because I am a Chinese brush painting teacher and I teach in my
God.
backyard studio.
I just got goosebumps. That's and I love it. What a beautiful
Yeah,
story.
yeah. I was like ready to fly to San Diego for this class, and there is a studio. I'm pointing this way, but is three buildings down from me. We were able to kind of start this friendship where I'm an OT, so I got to help with some of the caregiving and kind of adjustments in the
Yes.
home. We helped with some of the ER visits, and she taught us Chinese brush painting. My husband's actually very much more talented than I am at that.
Oh,
Um,
he's joined the class.
yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
wow. I mean, I love just how the story intersects perfectly with with what you do for a living.
Yeah. It's
And
been,
it's
I didn't realize that this is what I was going to receive, I think, in the world.
yes.
And I think as we've gotten to know more and more, we joke that we have our Latino grandparents, Asian grandparents, our white grandparents. I think we were looking for like a plumber at some point because our sink broke, and we were asking one of our neighbors who has lived in the neighborhood for 35 years, and he was like,
Hmm.
"Oh, I'm a retired plumber." So he walked like 2 blocks in the rain with all his tools over to just take a look at what was going on, and yeah, I just
Oh, wow.
really benefited, I think.
And I'm
From
sure
his
you
life.
share these stories with community members or when you're out there talking, with folks, right?
Yeah.
Encouraging folks. So I love the depth of it and just sort of the personal effects that it has had on your life. Um, so okay, let's take a step back because here we
Mhm.
are and you're doing this amazing work. But how did you get there? So I know we talked about going to OT school, moving into sort of like more journalistic and medical writing, was it? Or writing for
Yeah.
medical journals. So yes, fill in the gaps for us. How did you get to this point? How did you get from there to there?
It's a
As best
very
as
good
you can.
question that I sometimes ask myself as well. My former mentor, Dr. Beth Piatek at youth, we often joke that we have shiny object syndrome, which is like,
Oh,
this looks great, that
oh.
looks great. Yeah.
I think I have that too.
Yes. All the best people do. Um, and I think there's like a level of like wanting, like, And I feel like occupational therapists do this really well and that like, expanding the scope of what we do, but also like finding what the issues are and trying to solve for them. And so I think I have early memories of, working in the school district and my boss telling me, like taking we're addressing ADHD for these children.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not really sure if they have ADHD or they just they're food insecure. They have no breakfast in the morning. And me being like, you need to do something about that piece. Or, in acute setting, like I think for a while we saw a lot of patients with UTIs. And so I was like writing these little pamphlets for caregivers on like how to wipe correctly and, to just try to prevent UTI because many of them were in sepsis and
Mm-hmm.
it was quite severe. And so during graduate school, I started writing. I guess I found it as a way to vent about problems in a productive way. And so started writing for the Center for Health Journalism on postpartum mental health. I had a really fantastic mentor there, Michelle Evander, who really, I think, helped me channel my frustrations at the healthcare systems into something that could be read. And Ryan White as well, my editor. And yeah, I think was able to kind of take on some of these little projects. I got to consult for Lady Gaga's foundation for a little while and kind of help to build like their mental health campaigns and programming. They were really focused on suicide prevention and yeah, young people's mental health. And so really
Mm-hmm.
got to work on some of these little pieces. And um, yeah, I think through that just started to kind of work in health administration and um, I think the job I had before this was I got to work for Scan Health Plan and work on their clinical strategy. So both around addressing chronic care management, like for seniors that are high risk and emerging risk, as well as seniors experiencing homelessness and actually I think very innovatively, our team was also working on housing insecurity. So if folks felt burdened by rent burdened or were having family kind of mediation issues, like can we have community health workers and social workers and staff come and help to address, do some family mediation, medical management, help them apply for utility assistance or food stamps or other
Mm-hmm.
things so that they can stay housed because we know
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure you know more than anyone.
Yes, once
The
you're
ones,
unhoused, that's a whole nother process that you have to go through. So for sure, keeping people in their
yeah,
homes is best.
yes, and had a really lovely. I think a lot of it is around collaboration with. I think my Janelle Ramla, Rosanelli, and David. They had such like innovative ideas, and we just yeah, it's been just such a journey to be able to go through and experience.
So then this position came up, and what attracted you to it? Who informed you about it? What made you think, you know what, I'm gonna
Yeah.
apply?
Yeah, so I got to work with California volunteers a little bit when I worked for Lady Gaga's foundation. We were running a 21-day kindness program called Be Kind 21, which was a fantastic brainchild of my boss Maya. And California Volunteers was a partner through that, and so had kind of had them on my radar. But I love this idea that, every Californian has something to give and serve, whether it's you have a year, a day, or an hour to give. Um, we are engaging folks in service and volunteerism to tackle some of California and the nation's greatest challenges. And so had I think been primed by my fellowship around neighbors, and when I saw
Mm-hmm.
this, was like this would be the perfect way to kind of meld all my personal and professional interests, if you will. We can
Yeah.
make the world a little bit more connected. Maybe people can reach out in times of emergency. I get so many phone calls and emails about, people who have helped each other through emergencies, um, through fires. And it's really like just incredible to see like the goodness of the human spirit almost.
Yeah. And I love
Yeah.
that you get to witness that in your work
Mm.
every day, I'm sure.
Yes. Yeah.
I
Just
know
I
you.
think a few weeks ago they were sharing like there was one neighbor who they couldn't find. They left the back door open, and all the neighbors, like, and I guess the daughter who lives kind of in a different state was not able to find her. And
Oh
so they
boy.
activated a whole phone tree and was able to find that she was in the hospital and was able to kind of connect the family. And she's back from the hospital now, thankfully. But
Oh, great.
yeah, like just even those little pieces that really just make the world of a difference.
Absolutely. So I know you
Yeah.
also talked about there not being a typical day for yourself, but you also mentioned running groups, um, having face-to-face meetings out there in the
Mhm.
community. Can you share with us a little bit more about that?
Yes, that's my favorite part usually. So we do a variety of different events. I think we try to do as many site visits and be out in the community as much as possible. One of the ones that really struck me last year, and really inspired me, I think is maybe the best way to put it, is the Paradise Rec and Parks District. They have I think over 20 or 30 partners that they're working with, like community organizations across their community. And it's actually not just the town of Paradise that was impacted by the Camp Fire, although that's the one that gets the most attention, but also a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the communities around Magalia, Butte Creek Canyon. And so they put together these Good Fire weekends where oftentimes in partnership with indigenous tribes in the community or in the area and do some indigenous cultural education, prescribed burning, kind of sharing about the importance of prescribed burns to,
Yeah.
you know, and they have an innovative piece where it's led by certified forest therapy guides, and the wonderful woman who does it, Blake Ellis, she I think is also a therapist herself. But they do community fire therapy, so they'll have people talk, like close their eyes when the prescribed burn is happening, and of course there are staff there with the fire, but kind of have the senses. Like kind of go through your senses and experience fire for beneficial
Uh-huh.
fire for the first many people for the first time since
Yeah.
the
Since the
fire
fire.
and yeah, and so that really, I think, I didn't realize how much of a visceral reaction. I have never lost my home to fire, but was evacuated a few times when I lived in the Pasadena, Altadena area, and
Mm.
didn't realize how much of a visceral reaction that I personally would
Yeah.
also have to that. But yeah, I think a lot of being able to experience some of these events, talking to community members, doing these site visits, and seeing kind of the impact of work. Another one that I was really inspired by is the our work in Riverside. We are in the Arlanza community, which is um, more low income, and um, they have really, I think, built out a model with the Riverside Community Health Foundation and the nonprofit Love Riverside to bring people together and train them, do leadership academy trainings to become neighborhood leaders. And so folks who didn't previously feel like they had a voice in, making change happen in their community, now
Mm-hmm.
feel like they do and have put on wonderful events like movie nights. Like a group of high school students put together a movie night in their community garden and was able to kind of share that with all the families in the community. Food distribution, since food insecurity is a big issue, the
Mm.
garden is flourishing. It's been there for many decades and has kind of gone through different iterations. But after the pandemic, it was a little bit more difficult, and it's now flourishing, and it's like $3 a plot. So really just to cover water, and people are sharing food with one another, and it's just so beautiful to witness.
Oh, that sounds so wonderful. So I know I could name a few OT skills that are really coming into play in this role of
Yeah.
yours. Um, yeah, but please tell us what are the ones that you find you're just utilizing? Or thank goodness I learned this in my curriculum, and you know, yeah, are there any particular ones that you utilize the most?
Yeah. Um, I think. I think a lot about activity analysis, I think applied
Mm-hmm.
at the systems level, because I guess, oh, like down to its core, it's a population-wide intervention for behavior change, right? Like health
Yeah,
promotion
for
and
sure.
behavior. So I do get to use a lot of the lifestyle redesign concepts that I got to learn with Beth, and kind of the stages of change kind of
Mm-hmm.
elements. Definitely a lot of group facilitation and working across different sectors, and environmental modification. I think, um, yeah, I think those are some of those pieces. I think we were definitely coming from like a strength-based community assets. Everyone has something to contribute,
Yeah.
kind of model, which I loved in my OT curriculum, and some of the cultural competency and empowerment pieces as well. But I'm curious
Yeah.
also your thoughts on it.
Well, you started with
Yeah.
needs assessments, right? So I think
Yes.
that's really a great way to kind of connect with people is by asking them, what do you currently have? What's lacking? Really understanding what folks need, and
Yes.
what that community needs. So I think we're excellent at that because you also pointed out we're great listeners, right? So we're actually
Mhm.
listening and we're also seeing how as systems thinkers, how each of those or what might be impacting some of
Mhm.
those needs. For sure, engagement. Just we talked about doing from focus groups to Zumba at the park, right? Like that alone speaks for itself and how you need to meet your clients where they're at. If Zumba is what you need to do with them in order to engage with them, that's what you need to do with them.
Yeah.
I also feel like you have to communicate with so many different types of folks, right? The
Mhm.
community alone is quite diverse.
Mhm.
But in addition to that, you also have to communicate to leadership, right? Or to policymakers, but possibly,
Mhm.
or folks who are making decisions, which I think also requires a different kind of voice.
Mhm.
So again, another great reason for an OT to be in this position because we, those are some of our strengths, really.
Yeah. No, you're spot on.
So yeah, those are just
I
a
do.
few that's coming to mind right now. I'm sure I can come up with some
Yeah.
others, but important for our listeners to hear, right? Because
Mhm.
our skill set it's quite transferable and we really could
Yes.
function in a variety of settings and workplaces. So your role is an excellent example.
Yes. Actually, one more that I was just trying to remember, that I think it's Westmouth, the exploring addiction as occupation, which sounds a little bit unconventional, but I think I'm guilty of this as well. We are always scrolling.
Yeah,
And we've kind of replaced a lot of our social connection time with this social media time that, um, is not the same.
it
And
isn't.
yeah, and so have also trying to been thinking about that model of like how do you kind of help to replace that current
Yes.
addiction?
I was just
Yours.
speaking of this to a family member over the holidays about how, yeah, I'm so old where there was a time where, you know, people in the US weren't even texting like that. Like I remember going to Asia
Hmm.
and people in Asia were texting like that, but people in the US were not. And it
Hmm.
really took quite some time for that to catch on, but that's kind of how this whole thing started with us just
Yeah. The
being,
internet was
face to
confined to a
face.
room where you had to do some dial-up to
Oh
like
my gosh, yes,
maybe
that
get there.
that sound. Remember that sound?
Yes. And the little floppy disks so you could play like a game or
Oh my God. I joke with my students. I don't joke because it's true, but when I was in OT school, the internet did not exist. It did not
Mhm.
exist. I literally had to go to the library to do my research. I had
Mm.
to make photocopies and go to the
Yeah.
research section of the library to take out the book. Spent so much on photocopies. But anyway, enough about me dating myself. I think we were talking about yeah, just your role and how the different aspects or the different skills that are really coming into play in order for you to
Mhm.
be, to do well in your role.
Yeah, definitely a learning process. And I think I'm also very lucky. I think there's been like such a growing body of literature and like really fantastic researchers that I get to consult with regularly, like Dr. Julian Holt-Lumsden and Dr. Carla Personoto, who've been studying this for decades on loneliness and social isolation. Um, and part of it is like, I think there's some theory and the practice hasn't always caught up with the theory in programming and policy. And so we're really, I think, trying a lot of different things. And I think I keep emphasizing this, but spending a lot of time listening to communities directly because lived experience is so important to co-design like programming and things that will work.
Yeah.
Um,
Can you share with us, I don't know, just some challenges that you currently have and maybe some, some wins, some successes in your current role?
yeah. I think the challenges definitely come with the territory. Like oftentimes in the public sector, there's a lot of bureaucracy to navigate and understand, and some rules are rules, and some rules are rules that somebody said one day and then maybe um, can, can be modified. And um, yeah, I think I think in every industry there's some silos and ways that we could work together better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One win, I think, from some of the bureaucracy is one of our grant contracts. I think in the past, you were only able to subcontract out 49%. So a grantee could take the funding and subcontract less than 50% of that grant out. And in a lot of my learnings, I think, particularly in lower income communities or rural communities, um, they're not able to take on the capacity of such a big grant on their own. And so that was one of the rules that was not really a rule, just something that someone had written. But it did take several months to work with our contracting team and really be able to up that cap to about 75%. And
Okay.
that was actually was able to get a lot more grant applications, particularly in some of these communities that historically we haven't worked with as much. And so that was a big win for me.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I think. And then really, I think seeing the impact is just a win every day. Like hearing about neighbors connecting for the first time or the 10th time, supporting each other through challenging times like the wildfires. I think just today I was reading a story that was literally a line. It was like something along the lines of like some of the neighbors asked me to lunch. It was a really big deal to me. And so I
Oh.
just, yeah, I think. The challenges are also, I think, that this is a growing epidemic of loneliness. We got to meet with a delegation from Japan because
Mm-hmm.
Japan and the UK, fun fact, have ministers of loneliness who are there to address this crisis. And so we got to meet some of the folks from the cabinet of loneliness.
Wow.
And it's a little bit sad, I think, for maybe but they shared with us that in the first 6 months of 2024, the National Police Agency shared that 40,000 people died home alone. And of those, more than 4,000 were not discovered for more than a month.
Oh my
And
goodness.
of those, 100 plus were not discovered for more than a year. And they were sharing about one man in Tokyo who people just thought he was like a hoarder, and there was some smells coming from their apartment building, but from that apartment, but he had everything on auto pay, so nobody
Mm-hmm.
checked in until the
Oh.
bank representative came because the money had run out at the bank. And so I think about that a lot. I think Japan is one of the oldest populations in the world,
Mm-hmm.
but we're all aging populations, and so it feels quite daunting sometimes to think about kind of the isolation that we have now in our society. And um, but I don't know, every time I read a story of like a little someone connecting for the first time or um, that always helps me.
It's motivating.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I love that there's an OT in this
Mhm.
role
Thank you.
because you're making quite the impact there.
I
And
appreciate that.
it's, I love that Japan and the UK have ministers, right? That
Mhm.
really speaks volumes as far as this being a problem, a
Yeah.
crisis, like you mentioned. And I love that we're kind of, I don't know, hopefully getting an edge on it by having someone like you in this role who's really paying attention to this and kind of developing programs to address it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot about actually in my clinical days, like helping patients list out their social supports and if they didn't have any help to find
How
who
do
are
you, yes, how
what
do
are
you
your informal
access?
networks? Yeah.
Yes. So this is
Yeah.
just on a much larger level. And yeah, on a level where I think you also have, more of a direct connection to folks, to again, policymakers and folks or decision makers, right? Because at the end of the
Mhm.
day, we're doing the work, but if the decision makers are not leaning towards the decisions that we hope they will lean towards, it that severely impacts our communities. So you're
Mhm.
there representing not just for our communities, but also occupational therapy and how we could be of value in this
Yeah,
way.
definitely. Yeah.
So super proud of the work that you are doing, and just the how you're taking on the role, right? With such passion, and also I hear a lot of excitement. Like you're really happy with your day to day, and I hope that our listeners are also, yeah, getting a taste of that, and usually they do because they hear it in your voice, because this is it's passion work in addition to it being occupational therapy, and I love that you've been able to
Mhm.
find something to bridge both.
Yes, definitely. I feel very, very lucky in that way.
Ah, so okay, we'll switch gears a little bit and I'll ask you
Okay.
about money matters. Because that's often a typical question, right? With these non-traditional
Mhm.
roles, okay, how does that differ in, salaries or compensation? So if you can share anything with us about how you get paid for your work. I know you mentioned a grant too, and that being,
Yeah.
for a year. So if you can speak a little bit about that, that would be great.
Yes. So I think typically compensation in some of these community and population health roles really tend to vary widely, and they're often funded either through public dollars, grants, or philanthropy, rather than, I think, typically an insurance reimbursement.
Yeah.
Um, I think that salaries can really differ from clinical settings, but I do also feel, I think, I'm not sure actually if it's the whole country. I know California has it and New York has it, but there's a lot of salary transparency nowadays when you're applying for roles. And so I feel very lucky to be in this time to be able to take a closer look at those. No.
Yeah.
Um,
How often do you find yourself having to describe occupational therapy, or is that something that comes up in your work often?
um, Sometimes I think so. I think I have worked also a lot with seniors, and so they tend to have a good familiarity. If
True.
they haven't had OT services, then maybe someone they know has. I like to, and maybe I should have done this for the warm-up question, but I like to describe it as the like PT teaches you to walk and OT teaches you to dance, or if physical therapy is helping you with walking, OT is helping you with how are you brushing your teeth if you can't get to the bathroom right now,
True.
or what are the different pieces? And so, yeah.
Thanks for that. Now, can you think of any misconceptions or myths about your current role?
Yeah. I think I've been thinking a lot about the behavior change piece because I think generally very few people disagree with the idea that, we should get to know our neighbors and connect with people we haven't met before. Um, and so I think a common myth is that it's like reaching out to people, especially strangers or people you haven't talked to a lot, is awkward and uncomfortable and kind of scary.
Yeah.
I There's been some really wonderful research from Dr. Gillian Sandstrom over at the University of Sussex, and happy to send you a couple links.
Yes, please.
She All her research is on talking to strangers, and she's a self-professed introvert, and she started doing this research because I believe like at her workplace there was a hot dog stand next to her office building, and like a lady, a sales like who was selling hot dogs there, and she would say hi to her every day. And then one day the stand was not there for a little while, and Dr. Sandra like felt this profound Jillian felt this profound sense of loss. Um, and so she's been doing research on how to talk to strangers, and really like shows that in reality your perception of talking to a stranger is much more scary than the actual experience.
Mm.
Um, More often than not, there tend to be positive experiences. And as you do more and more, maybe by five or six, you start to get more comfortable and it gets easier with practice. And so, yeah, so
Great
something I
reminders.
try to think about as I make my way through the world.
And we're aiming for six, everyone, right? Six
Yes,
neighbors.
six neighbors. Um, More or less is good too. I like to think of it as the SMART goal,
Yeah,
to
love that. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing with us your journey, your role. I find it to be fascinating and again, just perfect for an occupational therapist. Now,
Of
if
course.
our listeners were interested in reaching out, would it be okay if they did? And what would be the best way for them to do so?
Yes, you can definitely find me through my work at meet6neighbors.com or caneighbors.com. You're always welcome to reach out on LinkedIn and Instagram. I can send you those handles and links. But yes, more than happy to chat with folks, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Well, thank you so much for that. We will for sure add those links to your show notes so folks can get in touch with you. Um, yeah, if they wanted to just pick your brain a little bit more about how you got to where you are today and, in this particular role that is fulfilling, that is, keeping you satisfied as a clinician and also, kind of fulfilling your goal of really wanting to make change, societal change.
Yeah, always happy to chat, and I wouldn't have been able to get to where I am without all of my mentors and community. So, yes, happy to be part of that network and part of the Uncommon OT network.
Yay, now we are. Thank you so much, Alyssa, again, for spending the time with us and telling us all about your work. I look forward to hearing more about what's to come.
Could talk on and on with you, Patricia. Thank you for your time too. And well, I'm sure we'll chat soon.
And that wraps up another inspiring episode of the Uncommon OT series. Connect with me at www.transitionsot.com. And don't forget to sign up to be part of the Transitions OT community. By doing so, you'll receive my latest compiled list of uncommon OT practice settings, the latest news on mentoring offerings, uncommon OT live events, non-traditional OT resources, and more. You may also follow me on my social media pages on Instagram and LinkedIn. And if you love this episode, head on over to Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, and Google Podcasts to follow, rate, and leave a review. I also ask you to consider pledging your support to my Passion Podcast project by being a patron on Patreon. It is very much appreciated. Sending big OT love. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.